They say we are more connected than ever. Billions of people linked through invisible signals, orbiting satellites, and synchronized systems that span the globe. And yet somehow we've never felt more disconnected from one another. That's not just irony. That's a paradox embedded in the very age we live in. We've developed machines that can simulate the birth of galaxies, but we still fumble when it comes to saying, I'm sorry. We've modeled quantum entanglement, the mysterious phenomenon where two particles mirror each other instantaneously across space, and yet we remain entangled in emotional misunderstandings with the people we love. We've sent rovers to Mars and engineered spacecrafts to orbit Saturn's rings, and still, a father and son may go decades without speaking. It makes you wonder, how can a species capable of decoding black holes remain so baffled by human emotion? The paradox of our time isn't a lack of information. It's the illusion that information by itself is transformation. That truth, when spoken loudly enough, becomes revelation. That if we just send the right article, speak the right phrase, choose the right moment, someone will change. As if consciousness obeys logic like gravity obeys mass. But the universe doesn't work like that, and neither do people. In astrophysics, we learned that nothing forces a star to shine. It shines when the pressure, mass, and time align. Not because we demand it, not because we will it, but because it's ready. That same law of emergence applies to human beings. Transformation, like fusion, is not coerced, it's catalyzed. Imagine a supernova. A star reaches the end of its life, collapses under its own weight, and explodes violently, gloriously seeding the universe with the raw ingredients for life. That star didn't argue its way into significance. It didn't persuade hydrogen to become carbon. It simply fulfilled its nature. And in doing so, it gave the cosmos the gift of possibility. Now, apply that to the human impulse to change others. We mistake influence for evolution. We believe persuasion is purpose. We think if we just explain ourselves better, they'll understand. If we love harder, they'll finally get it. But stars don't plead, they radiate. In our desire to help, we become gravitational anomalies pulling, pushing, trying to redirect someone else's trajectory. But consciousness doesn't respond to tug of war. It responds to conditions, temperature, pressure, timing. It responds to resonance. You see, even in the cosmos, timing is everything. Galaxies don't collide at random. Their dances span billions of years. And yet, when we deal with someone's habits, their pain, their resistance, we expect transformation instantly. Here's the thing. You cannot hand someone your epiphany and expect it to work like software. You cannot install your healing like an update and expect them to reboot into a better version. That's not how consciousness evolves. Each soul orbits its own path, influenced by its own tides, lit by its own internal sun. In physics, we learned that no particle can violate its quantum state without external pressure. But in the human condition, pressure often creates resistance-centered release. When you try to be the pressure, you often become the problem. But when you become the condition-safe, stable, non-intrusive, you become the space in which new states are possible. Let's revisit black holes. We often villainize them, but black holes are not evil. They're simply regions of such intense gravity that not even light escapes. Some people, because of trauma, fear, or history, live like that. It doesn't mean they're beyond hope. It means your light isn't meant to reach them yet. Maybe not ever. And that's okay. Because in a universe that makes room for both chaos and order, some stars collapse, some reignite, some become neutron stars, others form galaxies. Your job is not to decide which. Your job is to shine regardless. In nuclear fusion, the process that powers stars no atom forces another to combine. Fusion occurs only when the environment is right. Extreme heat, intense pressure, and precise timing. Then suddenly new element is born, and with it, light. That's not a metaphor. That's literal astrophysics. And it's also, in a way, emotional truth. So ask yourself, are you trying to be the pressure, or are you becoming the environment? You don't catalyze transformation by being louder. You do it by being clearer, by being still enough that your presence becomes undeniable. In a world that shouts, You become the silence that invites. In a society obsessed with argument, you become the embodiment of what's possible. The temptation to change others is rooted not in arrogance, but in love, uninformed by understanding. You want better for them, but sometimes in trying to help, we uproot what was still growing. We forget that Earth itself took 4.5 billion years to become habitable. The Amazon rainforest wasn't built in a season. Coral reefs weren't sculpted in a century. Growth is slow, complex, mysterious, sometimes invisible. And here we are, impatient, with a friend who still doesn't meditate, or a sibling who won't read the book we gave them, or a parent stuck in the patterns we thought we escaped. You are not here to be their savior. You are not the architect of their timeline. You are not the cosmic editor of their soul's curriculum. What are you? You are a signal, a lighthouse, a gravitational field of permission. Not permission to follow you, but permission to become themselves. In physics, resonance is a phenomenon where one object vibrating at a certain frequency causes another to vibrate at that same frequency. It doesn't require force, just alignment, just presence. When your vibration is coherent, calm, and consistent, it amplifies others, not because you ask them to change, but because they feel something in you that reminds them of who they are. This is what Dolores Cannon pointed to, not a spiritual army, but a vibrational invitation. Not preachers, but stabilizers. People who've stopped arguing, stopped convincing, and simply embodied. In this new paradigm, we replace instruction with invitation, urgency with patience, control with alignment. And over time, just like planets fall into stable orbits, people begin to shift. Not because you pulled them, but because they found safety in your gravity. So the next time you want to change someone, ask yourself, am I being the flame here? Am I being the oxygen? One tries to consume, the other sustains. Stars don't beg atoms to fuse. They just burn bright enough for fusion to happen. You don't need to raise your voice. You need to raise your frequency. Let's revisit a fundamental law of physics. Objects in motion stay in motion unless acted upon by an external force. That's Newton's first law. And yet, when we look at how people change, or more importantly, why they often don't, we somehow assume they're exceptions to this rule. We try to be that force. We push, we pull, we persuade. But unlike objects, humans resist when they feel control. Here's the irony. The more you try to change someone, the more their internal inertia pushes back. And that pushback, that's not just defiance, that's nature preserving sovereignty. Even a star collapsing into a black hole doesn't surrender without resistance. It takes time, pressure, and a breakdown of equilibrium for something new to emerge. Now think about someone in your life who frustrates you. Maybe they keep choosing the wrong partner. Maybe they avoid responsibility. Maybe they cling to a version of reality that hurts them. You can see the spiral, you know where it leads. And every fiber of your being wants to intervene. But remember this, you are not the gravitational force assigned to alter their orbit. In astronomy, when a planet strays too close to a larger mass, it can get flung out of its own system, ejected into the void. Sometimes when we try to rescue someone, we unintentionally destabilize them even further. Not because we don't care, but because we cared with interference, not intelligence. So what does intelligent caring look like? It looks like a moon that reflects light, not a star that burns another alive. It looks like resonance, not interference. It's being present without overpowering. It's being available without attaching. And it's letting someone evolve through their own combustion, not yours. There's a phenomenon in astrophysics called constructive interference. When two waves meet in phase, they amplify one another. But if they're out of phase, they cancel each other out. That's what happens when you try to change someone who isn't ready. Your wave cancels theirs. But when you resonate truly aligned without forcing it, creates amplification. A greater signal, not just sound, but transformation. Let's talk about pain. In stars, pain is heat. And heat is not the enemy. It's the precursor to fusion. In people, pain is often shame, grief, regret. And our instinct is to take that pain away. But what if the pain is part of the ignition sequence? What if their discomfort is the friction that builds enough pressure for awakening? Remember, the Earth was once molten chaos. It wasn't always blue and green. It raged with volcanic fire for eons before becoming habitable. And now, it's the only known oasis of life in the galaxy. So don't judge someone's process by its current temperature. Just because someone is erupting doesn't mean they're failing. It might mean they're forming something resilient beneath the surface. Sometimes the most loving act isn't stepping in. It's stepping back. Not in neglect, but in trust. Trust in their soul's gravity. Trust in the same universal laws that govern stars and cells and galaxies, because those same laws are at work in every human being, whether we see them or not. Let me bring it closer. We live on a planet rotating at 600 kilometers per hour, orbiting a sun that hurls through the galaxy at over 828, 0 kilometers per hour. That's happening as you sit in traffic, or wait for a reply that never comes, or try to convince your partner to go to therapy. Life is always in motion. The question is, are you aligned with its rhythm, or are you resisting it? True alignment doesn't shout. It hums, it emanates, it stabilizes. And when you become aligned, you don't change people, you change the field. We know from quantum mechanics that the observer affects the observed, not by interference, but by presence. When you shift your frequency, you alter the possibilities of the system. And the most powerful change agents throughout history, from Gandhi to Galileo, are aggressive influencers. They were gravitational anchors. Their lives became undeniable equations. And others rearranged around them not because of persuasion, but because of probability. The universe does not coerce. It offers. Let's take another cue from nature. Think of the butterfly, a transformation so dramatic it borders on science fiction. A crawling insect liquefies itself inside a cocoon and reemerges as something unrecognizably new. But what if you cut open the cocoon halfway through? What if you tried to help? You'd kill it, because the struggle is not the obstaclites, the mechanism. It's the biochemical code required for wings to form. You see, evolution never rushes, not in caterpillars, not in humans, not even in stars. And yet, in our desire to be loving, we often bypass that truth. We try to accelerate someone's metamorphosis by injecting our insight, our urgency, our fear, and we rob them of the very experience they need to grow. Not because we're cruel, but because we're impatient. Impatience is the human version of gravitational turbulence. It destabilizes orbits. It pulls moons from their natural course. It sends planets careening into stars. But presence is different. Presence is like mass. The more grounded you are, the more gravity you exert. And people like Comet SAR drawn not to shouting suns, but to silent mass. Not to noise, but to weight. There's a myth that change must be dramatic, that insight must be explosive, that people awaken in thunderclaps, but most transformation is subtle. It's like the redshift of galaxy slow, constant, barely perceptible, and yet it defines the motion of the entire universe. So too does quiet self-alignment define the awakening of a soul. There's a kind of maturity that develops when you realize the point of becoming whole is not to fix others, but to stop needing them to change so you can be at peace. That's the real revolution. Because once you anchor in that truth, your energy stops leaking into impossible missions. You stop trying to update someone else's software with your hardware. You stop editing their blueprint with your ego, and you begin doing something radical. You live your truth without trying to sell it. And when you do, people notice, not because you shouted, but because your energy speaks a language their nervous system recognizes, the language of safety, of stability, of you're free to be as you are. And here's the paradox. That freedom, that unconditional space, is what invites people to change. Let's pause and talk science again. In systems theory, homeostasis is the tendency for systems to return to equilibrium. That includes human relationships. When you stop pushing, you allow the system to find a new balance. When you regulate your own nervous system, you influence theirs without a word. This isn't manipulation. This is physics. This is coherence. Because you can't be a tuning fork for someone else unless you've stopped vibrating to your own anxiety. That's what Dolores Cannon meant by anchoring a frequency. Not preaching it, not enforcing it, living it. And like gravity, coherence doesn't shout. It simply shapes everything around it. So the next time you want to change someone, remember, your job is not to light their path. Your job is to be the light that reveals their own. You do that by being consistent, not perfect but authentic, not loud but luminous. And when they're ready, they'll navigate by your presencino, your pressure. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start trusting in their capacity to evolve, trusting in the cosmic curriculum of their soul, trusting that the same intelligence that formed galaxies is at work in their chaos. And maybe, just maybe, it's not chaos at all. Maybe it's formation. Because the universe never wastes a collision. It uses it to birth new orbits. Let's explore a misconception that lives deep in our psychology, that love is intervention. We believe that to love someone is to adjust them, to redirect their path, to correct their course when it veers off the trajectory we think is best. But if you observe the cosmos, that's not what love looks like. The sun doesn't force the moon to glow. It simply radiates and the moon reflects. The planets don't compete for attention. They orbit in resonance. The gravitational pull of stars doesn't demand it invites. So what if love isn't intervention? What if love is presence without condition? In astrophysics, we speak of stable system stars, planets, galaxies that maintain their balance not by control, but by harmony. Each element knows its role, exerts its force, and responds to others without dominance. That's what makes a galaxy spiral in perfect elegance for billions of years. Likewise, in human relationships, we destabilize systems when we assume the role of controller. When we say, you need to change so I can feel safe, you need to heal so I can be okay, that's not love. That's dependency wrapped in concern. The truth is, no one wants to be a project. No one wants to be fixed, because to be fixed implies that they're broken. And nothing in the known universe is ever truly broken. It's either evolving, transitioning, or preparing for emergence. Let that sink in. Even destruction serves creation in the cosmos. A supernova death of a starus, what gives rise to new planetary systems. The heaviest elements in your body, like iron in your blood, were born in those cosmic explosions. You are literally made of stellar death. And yet, we recoil when someone we love is going through darkness, as if we've forgotten that darkness births light. It takes extraordinary humility to love someone where they are, not where you wish they were. It takes cosmic patience to trust that their path, however messy, is still a valid trajectory through space-time. Sometimes the soul needs to collapse before it can expand. And your job isn't to stop the collapse. It's to hold the space around it, like gravity, like magnetism, invisible, silent, constant. This is what the new paradigm demands of us, not emotional reactivity, but energetic integrity, not commentary, but coherence. You don't have to agree with someone to respect their timing. You don't have to fix their thinking to hold your peace. You don't have to mirror their dysfunction to remain connected. In fact, your refusal to collapse into chaos may be the only lighthouse they see when the storm rises. And isn't that what stars do? They shine, regardless of who's watching, regardless of who believes in them, regardless of whether anyone ever thanks them for existing. They just shine. And in doing so, they light up galaxies. You see, the revolution we need isn't one of ideology, but of vibration. Not changing the world through debate, but by becoming undeniable evidence of peace. You don't speak to convince, you speak because it's honest. You don't act to prove, you act because it's aligned. You don't give to earn love. You give because love is your natural radiation. This is the science of spiritual gravity. And once you understand it, everything changes. You stop needing people to become different in order for you to feel okay. You stop outsourcing your stability to someone else's awakening. You stop tying your emotional state to the turbulence of another's process. And in that detachment, not coldness, but clarity, you find power. The power to stay still in motion. The power to burn without burning out. The power to influence without intruding. The power to be a star. Now, let's get honest for a moment, just between us and the stars. Sometimes they don't change. Not in this lifetime, not in the way you hoped, not in time to save the relationship, not in time to stop the damage. And that's perhaps the most painful discovery of all, that the people you love may continue choosing suffering, may keep circling the same black hole of habit, trauma, or fear. And still, you are called to love them, not blindly, not without boundaries, but with a kind of gravitational compassion that doesn't collapse when they do. Because here's the truth that scientists and sages have long understood. The universe never wastes energy, not even yours. When your love is offered without agenda, it doesn't vanish. It echoes. It ripples across the field. And even if the person in front of you never transforms, someone else might. Someone watching, someone listening, someone orbiting just beyond what you can see. You're not just loving them, you're loving the species. You're proving in real time that unconditional presence is possible, that non-reactivity is strength, that peace is not passivity, it's precision. So instead of asking, how can I change them? Ask, how can I become so coherent in my own being that I destabilize every lie around me simply by existing? That's what black holes do. That's what neutron stars do. That's what galaxies do. They don't need permission to warp space-time. They just do, by being dense with truth, rich with light, composed of matter that remembers its origin. And you, yes, you are made of that same origin. Star stuff, as Carl Sagan said. You carry the physics of fusion in your breath, the chaos of creation in your memory, the silence of space in your inner stillness. So why are you trying to shout your way to influence? Why are you yelling in spiritual frequencies when the cosmos has already proven that presence outlasts pressure? Here's what the universe invites you to remember. Stars don't negotiate their brilliance. Planets don't apologize for their spin. Galaxies don't ask for approval to collide. And neither should you shrink your light just to be palatable. Neither should you rush someone's orbit just because you've already made it through yours. Neither should you force enlightenment, because in cosmic time, everything unfolds when it's ready. We are in an age of resonance and not domination. We are graduating from missionaries to mirrors, from saviors to signals, from control to coherence. And when you stabilize your frequency, when you root so deeply in your own evolution that you no longer flinch at someone else's resistance, you become what every system craves but doesn't know how to name: a gravitational field of permission. That's right. You don't change people. You make it safe for them to consider changing themselves. And if they don't, the universe still doesn't waste the radiation. It finds a place to land, a soul to ignite, a system to warm, a seed to catalyze. Not because you tried, but because you burned. So as we close, look up really. Look up. Out there are stars that died millions of years ago, and yet their light is only now reaching us. And maybe, just maybe, your light, the choices you make, the peace you hold, the silence you embody is already on its way to someone you'll never meet, reaching them at the exact moment they're ready. That's how the universe works. So be that light. Fierce, quiet, infinite. Be the gravity that steadies not by force, but by presence. Be the evidence that evolution was never something we do to each other. It's something we become together through time, truth, and trust. Because in a world addicted to reaction, your stillness is a force. Your peace is revolutionary. And your presence, aligned and unwavering, just might be the most intelligent contribution to the cosmos you will ever make. And that changes everything.